Let's go do this podcast.
What's going on, Star Wars fans?
Hello there.
We are here with another episode of Star Wars Jedi Chat, and we are super excited to have a real rock star with us today. Please welcome Mr. Nick Perri. What's going on, dude?
Thank you guys for having me. I'm so stoked to be here. As I was saying before we started recording, I do music podcasts fairly often, and I'm always looking forward to them, but this I was looking forward to on a different level. This is just so cool.
We're honored to hear that.
Yeah, it's
become the truth.
That's awesome. It's become such a big thing with these live action things that are coming out with, the Acolyte and Obi-Wan and Mandalorian, I think sort of started it off. So I think it's really cool that Star Wars and Disney Plus are continuing to come out with this stuff and bring George's baby to life again and just continue to go on with it. It's really cool.
It's interesting you say that, because I know that everything's subjective and people have their own opinions, which is cool. But from where I'm sitting, I think it's such a great thing that there's more stuff in the universe and that we're getting more stuff on a regular basis. When we were growing up, it was like you got a Star Wars like every 15 years. There's when I was a kid, I was like making up things because I discovered the movies. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it early in my life. And then I had to wait it felt like 15 years before I got a new Star Wars anything. It's so cool. And I can share these moments with my daughter, and we can look forward to new seasons and the excitement in a more regular basis. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool that they've been able to continue to do that with this. And, no matter what you think or whatever, it's still good stuff coming out. I think, we both talk about this on the podcast because there are a lot of haters, and it doesn't matter whether it's music or movies or whatever, but it's everybody's opinion, and that's okay. For me as a Star Wars fan, like you said, it's been here for so long, and now we get more of it more frequently, which is really cool.
It is really cool. And I think overall they're doing a great job. I just think, I think there's a reverence. I think that the right people are involved where they need to be involved. And I think that you can tell there's a reverence for this. And everybody who comes into, I'm sure you guys watch the behind the scenes stuff on Disney Plus too. It's like when people come in, there's a genuine enthusiasm because most everybody grew up as fans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I do think that everybody's heart's in the right place and everyone has the right reverence. And I've really enjoyed just about everything I've seen. I've really enjoyed it all.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, how did your Star Wars journey start? How old were you, and what was your first thing you saw? And
well, I was just thinking about this for a number of reasons, because we just celebrated another May 4th not long ago, and that's like a holiday for people like us,
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you. So I want to say about 5 or 6 years old, and this is almost as early as I can remember back. I don't have many memories before this, but my mom and dad were and still are barbers and hairdressers. They worked a lot. On Saturdays, we went to my grandmom's house, and she watched us on Saturdays while they were working. And my grandmom and my aunt, who's no longer with us, Terry, but we called her the Doge. She was like the cool rock and roll one in the family, because my whole family was very conservative, kind of like a strict Catholic family. She introduced me to rock music years later. It's because of her that I took the path I'm on as a musician and artist, period, because of her. But she was also super tuned in, not surprisingly, to pop culture. And she would show my sister and I really cool stuff. As things were happening, when Terminator 2 came out, it was, she's the one who took us to see it. It was she was showing us the cool shit. So at some point in time, and again, this is about as far back as I remember, I was at my grandmom's house with my grandma, with my aunt, and in the same weekend, they showed me Star Wars and Back to the Future, which was can you imagine? It was a life-changing it was life changing. I just this past May 4th, I rewatched episode 4. I'm not saying it's my favorite of all of them, but it may be, but that's irrelevant. It has the most nostalgia for me possible because I distinctly remember sitting on the couch. I remember the shape of the room and where the TV was, and I remember seeing Luke come up onto the planet and seeing the two suns.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear the Force theme.
Yeah.
And it was like goosebumps. I mean, I actually have chills right now just thinking about it. Like it was like just a life changing, and it was such a moment where music meets the cinematography, and the power of all of that kind of comes in hand. That soundtrack with that shot it's inseparable, right? It's just part of the magic of that. And I'm sure that many millions of people around the world felt a similar thing when they saw that scene, and it had an emotional impact on them, right? So I remember seeing that scene distinctively. I remember just being obsessed. I immediately wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I later, when I had to choose a confirmation name for whatever, being Catholic school, I chose Luke.
That's awesome.
Because of Luke Skywalker, not Luke in the Bible. And I made sure I told everybody, and they were like, well, my mom's like, just tell them it's from Luke in the Bible. It's like, it's not, it's from Luke Skywalker. Anyway. But I also remember that there was like this junk drawer in my grandmom's house, and she had this old kind of like silver, like ribbed flashlight, and it looked like Luke's lightsaber. I mean, it looked identical in my mind. It was that was it. So I took that home, and then I had a lightsaber, handle, and I was for months and weeks and years. I mean, I was obsessed. I became obsessed, and also with Back to the Future and DeLoreans, and that's a whole other offshoot. But for me, that was my gateway. It's never stopped. I've never stopped being a fan. I saw the other original, episode 5 and 6 probably at some point shortly after that, and I was Luke Skywalker for Halloween, and it became like, I just became into it, as we all do, and that was how it started.
That's awesome. And it's crazy how it just continues, and it brings us in, because especially back then, if you go back and watch it, yeah, you can tell it's older, but I feel like what George did back then in the 70s and early 80s, I mean, it still looks fantastic on film. The dog fights and the battles and stuff, and even the acting in it at that time, I thought was fantastic, because you get those little quirks and the little jabs and the little one-liners and stuff like that, which bring it all together. Talked about this before. It was a little bit of a lull, for a little while, and then we heard rumors, that they were going to come out with the prequels, and it was like, oh, no way, this will be great. And then when they came out, it was an explosion for me. I got back into it and just went full force into it. And then, like with Nick being younger, those were the prequels were his, and then started getting into the other stuff as well. But I just thought how cool, we were able to step away for a little bit. We all thought, I thought, okay, we'll never see it again. We're just going to go with these 3 movies. When the prequels came out, it was just amazing, I thought, and they did just such a good job.
Yeah, it was magical, because those movies I got to see in the theater, mm-hmm. and I got to have the full fan experience of being a part of it. It was magical, and it's interesting because I work with an audio mixer who's about 10 years younger than I, and he, same thing as Nick. So his Star Wars were the prequels. So the nostalgia and the memories that he has of being a kid were with those movies, the way that mine were with the original 3. And and my daughters will probably be with some of the newest stuff. Like, her favorite thing is the Obi-Wan series, because she can identify with the little girl. Yeah. And I thought that was a brilliant series, and I thought the little girl actress did the most incredible job in the world.
So good.
And she was so good. And my daughter was just instantly identified, like she was her Luke. It was like, because I saw myself, and that's part of the magic of movies in general, that we see ourselves in the hero role, right? So we want to be usually the hero or the villain, right? So, and can't forget about the villain.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so that's the magic of this whole catalog, this whole universe. And I think that people who are fairly open-minded and who are fans of the franchise, hopefully, like, realize that. Like I said, everyone has opinions and stuff, but I'm a fan of all of it. I love the whole universe, and anytime that I can go into it, like every Tuesday night now I'm watching with some friends that we're having Star Wars nights. Like when I can go and we turn off the lights and all of a sudden you see space, and it's like anytime we can go into that universe, it's special.
Yeah. Well,
it's special.
There's something uniquely special because when you were explaining seeing the twin suns and hearing the Force theme, I got goosebumps listening to you say it because I feel that same way. From that scene too, man, when I think of the blast doors opening and Darth Maul's standing there and that big duel of the fates, when that's like, as a kid, that brings me like, I want to run through a brick wall. I've told Ron before that I used to, before like basketball games when I was in high school, in college, I used to listen to Duel of the Fates or, Battle of the Heroes. And just like rage by myself. And there's something about, it's not just the score, but like where you're at when you're in it, watching and experiencing the thing, and it lasts like forever. It'll never leave you. And it's incredible. Along with the other memories, like seeing yourself in the heroes or the villains. Villains, arguably, guys, maybe cooler than the heroes at times. But yeah, it's a special that like I've never been able to adequately describe to people, but it's transports you to this place that just felt so whole as a kid, and it still is every Tuesday. Like you said, tonight I'm psyched.
Yeah.
Check out what's going on. Despite what anybody's saying or whatever, we get to get into our world tonight.
Yeah, I don't care what anybody says. I'm so into it and I love it, and I go out of my way to like leave positive comments on the Disney social media because there's so many people, and it's like, dude, like why even follow? You just go like do something else with your time. You know what I mean? That I don't want to focus any energy on negative stuff, but I go out of my way to put positive because I'm grateful that these people are taking the time, and of course they're making money on it, but I'm grateful that they're taking their time and they're being as careful as they are with it because we're all emotionally involved. And we get new Star Wars stuff. So I'm grateful for that thing. I think also, and it's why I've kind of dedicated my life to the pursuit of music, is I feel like and I'm a huge movie buff as well. And I feel like movies and music, like we connect as human beings, we connect on an emotional level. It's deeper than just doing something, you know what I mean? Insert any activity. Like when you go into a movie, you put yourself in that universe, or you're put on a record and you go into that record. When I'm listening to Dark Side of the Moon or The Wall or any of the records, Abbey Road, that changed my life. Like we get emotionally involved, you know what I mean? And it's a connection, like you said, that can't be severed. You can't separate it once those bonds are there. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think they've done, like you said, they've done such a great job, and I think Dave Filoni and John, have got the Mandalorian, crushed it with that, continued, and again for me, out of all of these new live actions, and we've talked about this before, but Obi-Wan was my favorite out of all of them. I loved them all, but for me, that was so nostalgic because again, I did, grow up. I mean, I've seen every Star Wars movie in the theater, which is pretty cool. And to see that come to life again in that era was so cool for me. I loved how they did that. I loved that they brought in little Leia, because I know we all thought, okay, it's going to be about Luke and Ben and whatever, but when they brought her in, for me, that was so cool for me. I thought we get to see a little bit of this, we got to see some more Bail Organa, and then the last two episodes where they fight, it's just I mean, I get goosebumps now, just thinking about that when he finally realizes and they're both there, and again, it brings you right back to Mustafar, where they're, and it's just like, it's just crazy. And I think they've done such a great job to continue that and keep that story alive with Dave and John. Yeah.
And for me, like what you had said, Nick, for what Luke was to you, for whatever reason, Obi-Wan was for me. And I know a lot of people my age, bonded with Hayden Christensen. I did too. I love Hayden Christensen. but for whatever reason, like Obi-Wan was my guy. So to go back to that show and get to see it and kind of like also still hurt with him, you know, like you said, the last couple episodes were cut me deep.
Yeah.
But and it's that nostalgia of the original era and what I grew up on kind of mixed together in a way that I don't feel like they had ever done yet. And it was awesome.
It was kind of a total blending of all those timetables in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was very special. And Ewan McGregor, I think, is just such a tremendous actor. And when I heard that he was in it, was just like, this is going to be incredible.
Mhm.
He has that warmth. I almost feel to him the way I felt about Alec Guinness in the original one. That like almost like this kind of like fatherly feeling that I get when I watch him in these roles. I think he was just incredible. I'm trying to think, because you were mentioning the last couple episodes. I can't remember whether it was Boba Fett or it was the second season of The Mandalorian, but can I talk about like things that are happening? I'm not giving spoilers.
Oh yeah,
no, right?
No,
We're good.
Okay, so when Luke shows up at the end, like I full on cried. Like I had like a full on like thing that happened. And it was just so deep because it's like, again, we grew up with these things. We have connections to these characters. I also have this thing where like when I'm watching a movie, like it's real to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the suspension of disbelief is like fully there for me.
Yeah.
So I don't actually like come to and go like, oh wait, like I have to like go to the bathroom and eat something. Like I'm a normal person in a house watching TV. Like for those however many hours or whatever, like I'm in the story, I'm in the movie, you know?
Yeah.
So I get like extra emotionally involved and invested. And when Luke showed up, and I knew it was him right away. As soon as the X-wing, I was like, it's Luke. and everyone that I was with was like, and like it was just so incredible. And I just was so grateful to have that moment again, because that was like one that was just cut really deep for me. And I was like, how cool that I can have that this franchise is still doing that 30 years later, you know?
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say. I think it's so cool to bring that. What they do in Star Wars is you have your Easter eggs, but they all come back, or they all come back to that one plot, you know, that George has, you know, created. And I think it's so cool with this stuff. We're coming up on, so in 27, A New Hope's going to be 50 years old, you know, which is insane. But it all comes back to that. And I think it's really cool how they explain everything too. You could sit down and watch Obi-Wan and never seen a Star Wars movie in your life and still get the gist of it. And they're, you know, just like we were talking about with the Acolyte, you know, a lot of people were talking about this last episode. You had to have this last episode, this episode 3, that they start to tell us the story of the twins. It's, you have to have that, so you have some background and you sort of know what's going on. And I think they do that with telling the stories. I think they also do that with the Easter eggs, you know, little things popping up here and there, which I think is so cool. And everything at some point does get explained. You're not going, oh, what about that person, or what about that person? Now, maybe halfway through the series, you might be like, okay, who is that and what does he have to do with this? But by the end of that series, or maybe the next episode, you know, oh, okay, I know why that person's there or what they're doing here. And I think it's cool that Dave and John have been able to do that. Even with the Mandalorian, you know, when he's walking through on, I think it was Tatooine or wherever it was, when you see the stormtrooper helmets sitting, you know, on the spears or whatever, I was just like, oh, that's amazing. It's so cool.
I know.
You know?
I know. Yeah. And when I saw episode 7 and you see it zooms out to where Rey is scavenging, and you see the
Star Destroyer.
Thank you. The Star Destroyer sitting in the sand, and it's just like, oh, it's a callback to what I grew up with, you know. And there's a ton of them. Obviously, that movie's filled with them. Just to get that stuff, and like my daughter wouldn't have known or felt that same way, but you know, she's making memories of things that maybe in 30 years from now she'll, you know what I mean? Like you don't know, but that's it's just so cool.
Well, and that's also stuff like there's all kinds of lore outside of the movies that explain all this stuff. But in that shot, like you don't need an explanation. You know, wow, Star Destroyer, battle happened there a long time ago from where I used to be. I'm loving this. Keep it coming. And then they kind of pop up in ways that just kind of serve visually, like where you are in the, you know, like you said, the suspension of disbelief, you're there. And so you're seeing these relics of your own past kind of in these shows or things that you're familiar with that help sort of like, you don't need to explain it outright, but it gives you a lot of context to make you feel comfortable with what's coming, even though we're all obviously always invested in what's coming. But, even with the Acolyte, Nick, they have these like High Republic books for the last like 2 years of this era that the Acolyte's in. And for me, I'd been reading those, and for me, like seeing them, oh yeah, they got the white robes on in the temple and they got the brown robes on out there. This is cool to see, not only something I know, but even as a prequel kid being like, oh, this is like the past of the thing that I grew up with. This is like a whole new thing that I'm psyched to see, because it's, this thing that I always imagined that now is taking place in front of me, and I'm here for it.
Totally. Totally. I have to hook you guys up with Walt Laffey, who was and is the singer of Silvertide. Both him and Brian Weaver, the bass player, huge Star Wars fans. Walt in particular, though, he got into Star Wars later in life, but he's as type A as anybody who's ever lived. And so not only has he watched and consumed everything there is visually, but he's also either read or through audiobook digested. I don't even know if this is possible, but he told me hundreds of books.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that's ever been written, canon or not canon anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even know that there's that many stories out there, but he's so deep into all the novels, all the books, all the stories, all the animated stuff, all the live action stuff. But he would, depending on how deep you guys want to go, he would be a really great conversation, because he's way deeper than I. That doesn't make me love it any less, what I know, of course. But yeah, I know that there's a lot more out there, which is cool because there's so much more to discover. And I feel the same way about music. There's I know thousands or tens of thousands of albums at this point that I've listened to over my lifetime, but there's so many more that I'll never listen. It's an endless well.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Well, I would say, this is for anyone watching, but also just in general, because we had come up with some conversations, especially, myself with my friends. If I say, hey, did you listen to the podcast? And they go, oh, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I like Star Wars, but I don't know what you're talking about. And I don't think it's an exclusive thing. I think there's something for everybody. You can watch one trilogy if you want and you love it. That is perfect. There's no gatekeeping in my world, I guess. Maybe there is out there, but I feel like as long as you have formed that connection that you said is unseverable, you don't have to go crazy on books or shows or even more movies. If you love that thing, that is yours. Much like music, you love that is now yours. And
Totally.
As much as it is the three of us or everybody else out there.
Gatekeeping is a great word, and I feel like in music there's a lot of that as well in certain circles, and I just think it's total BS. It's just like, dude, like, whatever stick is up your ass, like, pull it out. Like, This is, everyone can have their own experience, and can, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't have any time for that stuff. So it's cool that you said that, because I also agree. Very cool.
Yeah, everybody has their opinion, and that's okay. Like we talked about, and we'll just skip over it. But again, the negativity, fine, keep it to yourself, because again, we like this stuff and we're thriving on it, and that's why I'd love to meet him or bring him on. But and that's one of the reasons I brought Nick on, because he even knows a little bit more lore than me and has read more books than I have. Now I probably have a couple hundred books here. I haven't read them all. But I've dove into them. I do the audiobooks again. When you're on a tour bus for 8, 10, 12 hours, you're on a flight somewhere, they're so good. And some of the stuff that they're coming out with, it explains more things. And these ones that we've talked about before, which are becoming some of my favorites, are these books that are called From a Certain Point of View. And they come out, and they're right now they have one for the Clone Wars, but they also have 3 for 4, 5, and 6. So what it is it's these little stories, and it's from people that you might know or you saw them in the movie, but now you're in their mind and they're giving you that little story when they were in the cantina. So the two twin sisters in the cantina with the hair, when Obi-Wan and Luke are in there, there's a story about the two of them in there, and they're talking about what they're seeing, and then some old man comes in with a saber and cuts the guy's arm off, so you get their thing, or you're on the Death Star with one of the technicians, and you their story is in there, or a fighter pilot, whether it's a TIE fighter or whatever. One of my favorites is Boba Fett. You hear when the scene when Han meets Jabba and some of the bounty hunters in the docking bay, when he walks over his tail and when they did the new CGI stuff. But part of that, there's a story in one of them where Boba Fett's in there just going, I just want to kill this guy right now. I don't like, so it's really cool to bring in some more of this stuff. And they've all just come out in the last few years, which is cool. So it brings me back to A New Hope, back to Empire, back to Jedi, which is really cool with some characters. Yeah, I knew who that was. There's one, with Salacious Crumb. Salacious Crumb has a little thing in there, Jabba's little pet. There's a little story with him narrating it. But I think it's so neat that they're bringing all this stuff back, and people are still enjoying it, along with the live action stuff and the comics. I don't get into the comics as much, but there's lots of lore and history in these comic books too, which is really cool. And I think it's just amazing and awesome that we can still continue to do this. And I've said that's many times on this podcast, but I was 10 years old when I saw A New Hope in the theater. And by the time I'm not going to be around anymore, I will have had Star Wars in my whole life pretty much, which for me is amazing. Cool. They're still continuing. I thought as probably as well as you did. Okay, 4, 5, and 6. That was a great series, Star Wars, George Lucas, awesome. Got my figures. I'm Han or I'm Chewie. And then we grow up and we didn't have it for a while. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm still a fan. I'll still watch it when it comes on TBS or TNT or whatever on the Memorial Day weekend. Like I said earlier, when it came out again for the prequels, and then, we just kept going with it. It's just so cool that they can keep it going, and they still have good stories, and they're bringing new characters in here for us.
I love it. And I agree. I wanted to ask you what it was like, because I've only spoken to one or two other people who saw episode 4 in '77 and saw it in the theater. What was that like?
So it was really cool because
you had no, just for people who are listening, there's no lore yet going into this. No one knows Star Wars from a hole in the ground.
No. And it was cool. And I have a similar, memory of Luke with the twin sons, because again, we have one son, and then at 10 years old, you're like, okay, wait, there's 2 sons here. So that was definitely something for me to focus on. But I remember it was the whole family, my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister. I'm the oldest. So all 5 of us, we were waiting in line to the theater. And we got up there, and about 3 or 4 people in front of us, and they sold out. So we were all like, oh my gosh, well, now what are we going to do? So we went across the street or something, got dinner, came back 2.5 hours later, 3 hours later, got tickets for or I think we bought the tickets and then went and had dinner. So we had tickets. So when we came back, like in the good old days when everybody went to the movies, it was packed. And I remember we were about 5 rows from the front. So, I'm watching it like this. It was just in there, and it was just so surreal. Again, I never experienced anything like that. And for me at that time, when those came out until Empire, Chewie was just like, oh, this character is so cool, So I remember seeing him and just clinging on to him for a couple of years until Yoda came along, and then that just blew my mind, and I was like, I was in on Yoda. For me to see it in the theater, at the end, people are cheering. Nobody does that anymore. It was packed, and it was just so cool to see these things that George had put on the screen, and they had come to life. And like you said, I'm just sitting there like I'm an observer on this planet or on this starship, whether I'm a passenger or whatever, but I'm in this movie right now, and this is amazing. And there's these guys with these laser swords or whatever they are, and wait a minute, he just killed that guy, and oh, this guy that's breathing like that, man, he's a badass. He don't care about nothing. And then when they blow up Alderaan, I was just like, holy cow. I mean, they just killed millions of people in this. And she gave them the answer, and they still did it. Just things like that. I remember distinctly, remember seeing those things and just being astounded with with what was going on, and then even then there was still a little bit of chatter about another one, and I was like, oh, this would be cool if they come out with another sequel or whatever like that. And obviously history was made, but it was just so cool. And I remember it very vividly, just standing in line with my whole family and getting up to that counter, or hearing those people say, sorry, the show's sold out. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. Then walking in and seeing the movie for the first time, and it was just, like I said, it was just huge in front of me, and meeting these new characters and not knowing what was going on. You didn't know what the Force was. You didn't know what these laser swords were. And then these dog fights at that point in 1977, when these X-Wings and TIE fighters it's just like, that's like real life. That looks like, I mean, he did such a good job with that. I thought it was just amazing, so that's
I know. Even to this day, it's still, like you're saying, it still looks great. It's hard to believe that it was done. In fact, I think there was a documentary on ILM that came out on Disney Plus a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I loved I was hanging on to every minute, every word that they were saying as they were showing the team with the models.
Yeah.
Like dumping all the model pieces, like, 10 different model cars, whatever, ships all together, and like, fixing them all to the Falcon and doing the whole thing. But that's very cool. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm always curious about that because, I guess, we all have context now. And back then no one knew about it yet. And,
right.
I think probably the only kind of space adventures that people were watching would have been like 2001.
Yeah,
Flash Gordon. Yeah,
you had Buck Rogers, I think, at the time, or it came out just right after that. But yeah, you didn't have space operas at that time. Then Battlestar Galactica comes out, and you have some other things that started to come out. And then as we obviously continue to grow, these other things come along as cinema starts to grow as well, and social media, and you had no context whatsoever. Except I remember seeing the commercials on TV of Star Wars back then, and those are probably some of my first memories. I don't remember too much, before that. A couple little things, but remember seeing those commercials on TV and was like, I can't wait for this to come out. This is going to be great. We're going to go see it. Then once you sat down and watched it, and it was just like, you just were in awe.
Yeah.
I
remember seeing episode 1. First time I was ever seeing a Star Wars. Nick and Tree did too. First time I was ever seeing a Star Wars in a theater, and the lights went down, and the music, and and everybody cheered.
Yes,
and it was like the loudest thing. I was like, because I was in the front of the theater, and I was like, I couldn't believe how loud everyone was. So excited, and it's like that kind of thing. That's the good stuff in life, That's like that pure, wholesome joy. It's just so you wish you could just like bottle it up.
Yeah.
Well, you can in the movies themselves. Yeah. I didn't get to see Phantom Menace in the theater because I was 3. So
oh wow.
But I did see it. I got a VHS of it because my parents had taped A New Hope when it was on TBS.
Right.
So we had like a home tape of with commercials and all from like 98 or whenever it was, and I was obsessed with that. And then in a grocery store, once Phantom Menace was out on VHS, they had like a whole section that was all Phantom Menace VHSs for rent. And I was like, can we get this? And my parents were like, I don't know, it wasn't in the budget. I'm not really sure what we can. And so we got it. And then someone gave it to me and I wore it out. So the first one I got to see in the theater was Attack of the Clones, and I was super pumped. But the big one for me was Revenge of the Sith because, like Ron said earlier, that was supposed to be it. I even remember there was like a 60 Minutes with George Lucas where he's like, it's over. Revenge of the Sith is done. And I remember I was similar to you, I was in line with my mom. We were like third in line. We went there so early on opening night, and I was 9. And when we're in there, we were like right in the front. And that opening sort of like scene where it's that one shot, it's like a couple minute shot. It's a one shot space battle thing where they're flying through the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah. When you go, like, I always go back and watch it because I didn't have any concept of what that is, but to have that all happen in one whole shot for a couple of minutes and it still looks good today. then you imagine like that through a 9-year-old brain in the front of
Yeah.
a theater, and this is like the greatest night of my life. I mean, I can bottle that up forever. I'll never forget that. But you're right, the music and the cheering is like something else. Well, I'm sure being on stage is also pretty electric too, but
It is. But yeah. That's so cool. I mean, what we're talking about are like, these are core memories that we all have.
Mhm.
And it's all because of this piece of pop culture, which has changed so many lives. It's such an awesome thing. George Lucas is a god.
Yeah. I mean, he is most of our gods. But like you said, that pop culture, and you have other movies, Back to the Future and Rocky or whatever. You have some of these iconic movies, but you don't hear a lot about those in as much. You don't hear as much about those or lines from their movies as you do from Star Wars. Big Bang Theory, Family Guy. Everybody has a Darth Vader or a Chewie or a silly little thing here or the Force or, which I think is so cool because you don't get those references as much as you do Star Wars. You still get a few here and there from other movies. The Star Wars references are astronomical compared to everybody else because it has become, like you said, pop culture. It is part of everybody knows whether you've seen it or not. And that's the funny thing too. People be like, "Oh, I've never seen Star Wars. Like I'm going to hate them." I don't. Okay, that's fine. I'm not saying that you have to. Just because I'm a huge fan doesn't mean I'm not going to like you because you haven't seen it. But you know what it is. It doesn't matter who you are. You know what Star Wars is.
Totally.
And I think that, like you said, with George, he has brought that whole thing to us, and it's just gone on for, like I said, it'll be almost 50 years. And it'll continue to go.
Yeah.
Incredible. Truly incredible.
Speaking of mentioning being on stage, I have a question for you, Nick.
Sure.
Are there any short list of Star Wars characters that you think could be pretty good at guitar?
Ooh, pretty good at guitar. Anybody who's good with a lightsaber, I feel like probably has the coordination to either be a pretty good guitarist or drummer. So yeah, I even think, it's funny because going through my mind right now is like, who would be the band? I think that Han would be like a bass player. I think that he would be bass. I'm just trying to get like a visual going.
Maybe we build a band here. Yeah.
Let's build a band.
Yeah.
I love this idea. Okay. Who do you think would be the drummer?
For strength, I don't know about speed, but for strength, I got to say Chewie maybe.
Dude, Chewie would be a great drummer.
Yeah.
Just in the pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got
laying it down.
He's got the pilot articulation, so I figured he could get around a kid.
Nice. I mean, I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say Luke is involved and he's playing guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's lead or rhythm, but Luke is a guitarist.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had that one. I don't know if you've ever seen that shirt, or I think it's a poster too, and they have like a bunch of them playing. I think Darth Vader's got a guitar on, and they have a couple. I forget who the other characters are.
No, I haven't seen this. I would love to see this.
Luke and Leia and Vader, and I'm not sure who else is in there. Maybe there's a stormtrooper or something. But I like our group better. I think. I think Chewie. I think Han on bass. Definitely think Luke. Yeah, on a guitar. Maybe rhythm.
Okay.
I don't know who the singer would be tough.
What if it's female front? What if it's a female fronted rock band?
I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah, I definitely could see that. I don't know if Leia would be.
She'd have the attitude. I think.
Yeah.
Padme would have the attitude.
Yeah.
I could see Padme singing more, even though she was the senator. If I could see Padme up there as a front person for sure.
Or Leia and Padme are both doing like female background vocals, and there's another lead singer role.
That's true. I might throw a lead guitar out there.
Go ahead.
It's not going to fit in with the group, but maybe you need it. Palpatine putting a little electricity through for a little extra heat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What if Palpatine though is the producer?
Oh,
there you go. Yeah.
Because he's like the older experienced guy. More electric.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I almost think of him as like in the Saturday Night Live skit where Bruce Dickinson's played by Christopher Walken, and he comes in and wants more cowbell. So Palpatine comes in and he wants it more electric.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Good point.
I love that though. Thank you for bringing him up. I love that.
And we could have a keyboard player too, so we
Yeah.
got
Ooh, absolutely.
Max Rebo.
yeah, we could. Yeah, he would probably be the sensible choice. He's old school. He's the OG.
Yeah, Jabba's right hand band guy.
Maybe young Obi-Wan on lead.
Ooh.
Okay.
All right. I like that.
I think he commands a presence. Got to have a little attitude out there if you're a lead guitar player. You gotta and you gotta be able to bring it. And I think he does. I think he's underrated. Honestly, for me, I think he is one of the most underrated because again, if you go back and watch all of them, which we all have, but I think he is very underrated. Defeated Grievous, defeated Maul twice. He defeated Vader once. Twice technically. He defeated Anakin and when he was Vader. People are like, oh, okay, but he's a good guy. Qui-Gon I think was a badass as well. But I think Obi-Wan is just very underrated. I think he could be up there. He could have been on the council. Absolutely. He could have been
100% agree. 100% agree.
And speaking of that, it would just take a little bit of a right turn. The new book, The Living Force, is a new book that's out that I actually started audioing. They have all the Jedi Council on there, and there's little stories, and they have a theme to the book, which is really cool. I learn a lot more about Qui-Gon in this, along with the other members in the Jedi Council, which is really cool. But I think Qui-Gon was just such a badass, but Obi-Wan was just so underrated, and I think we see that in the Obi-Wan movie as well.
Totally.
the live action. I think that's so. I think him young Obi-Wan, and you could have Alex get up there, and sit down and play like a little Dickie Betts, or something like that, sitting in a chair. But I think young Obi-Wan would crush it on lead.
I love that. Who was Qui-Gon's master? Who trained Qui-Gon?
Dooku.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I wish I knew more about Qui-Gon's story. I feel like we only got him for such a short time, at least in the live action movies. Is there other books and stuff that concentrate more on his story?
There's a little bit. There's also a little really short animated series called Tales of the Jedi, and it's like a cross between young Ahsoka stuff and then Dooku's like turning. And Qui-Gon's involved in that, so you get to see him a little bit like really young, kind of going.
Dude, Ahsoka, she's the singer, dude.
Yeah,
such a badass.
Yes. Yep.
Wow, there we go.
Perfect. Yep. Yeah, I totally
love that.
Yes.
I would go see the band tomorrow.
Yeah. And they can get everywhere fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Touring is very easy for them.
Yeah. No tour buses.
Yeah.
Just get on the Falcon or whatever and head to the next show.
But there's also, just real quick, there's also like a couple of books, one book for sure that goes into like Qui-Gon and very young Obi-Wan's relationship and what he's about. It all is pretty respectful to like what we get from him in the Phantom Menace. Like it's all basically tied into who he is that we saw. It's very cool. He's on my little Mount Rushmore.
Yeah,
I would say. Sad to see him go so soon.
Yeah, it was sad to see him go.
We had Mashawn on here who plays Aura Singh, and we were talking to her and Amy Allen as well, who plays Ayla Secura, the Jedi, and it was cool to talk to the two of them about how small their characters were, or the pieces that the scenes that they were in, like a Boba Fett, where we saw a little bit of him, but what a huge character he had become. And same with, Aura Singh, we saw her for a half a second on the mountain with her little antenna and her bald head in her orange outfit, and then that was about it. With the books and the comics and the Clone Wars and stuff, they bring her to life a little bit more, and it was neat to talk to the two of them and how excited they were to see their characters come into animation or continue to live on, even the small parts that they had. And it was just really cool seeing how they reacted as well to these parts, and again talking to them about their experiences, and talking with George, and meeting George, and him giving them direction. It's so cool to talk to people. And Amy actually worked at ILM, back in the day. And so she would do her thing with that. And then, they brought her in to do some acting stuff. And then the next day she'd be back doing her ILM, stuff. But it was just really cool. I'm sure everybody has a bad day, but anybody that we've talked to or interviewed or anything, the staff, George, it's just such a good collaboration of people. And I think they've kept that going with, like I said before, with Dave and John that are in charge of this now. It's just cool to see that it's not, crazy, stupid stuff, people being jerks, people being assholes and treating people like crap. Everybody was just so nice and wanted to get everything done and done properly. And George was the one that sort of took the reins on that, obviously, and was still, even with the prequels, was still involved and saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing for this character. It's really neat to talk to some of the people that were involved in that as well, and none of it I don't think has deterred me from anything. It's just made me love it even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the warning to like never meet your heroes. When you talk to the people we've talked to and we ask them about George Lucas, that saying is not the case. They're like, he's the best. It was so cool to be around him. He's so nice, so respectful. Which is
I love that
to hear. Yeah. But
yeah, I love that too. Sometimes it is a little nervous. I've never met George. I would lose my mind.
Right.
I've met other heroes of mine, and you're always a little, because you don't want to have a bad experience,
mm-hmm.
But you also have to remember that everybody's a human being and has good and bad days, of course, as we all do. But I think a good person, even on a bad day, it's still a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's really cool to hear. That makes me feel good, and I would have assumed that as well. I mean, this stuff, he had to think of all this stuff, and I'm sure he had his inspiration as well. I heard at some point that, and I don't know the truth to this, maybe you guys would know, that he was inspired, I guess, by the first Dune. Did Dune predate some of the writing that he had done? Like was inspired by that in some way? The book, yeah, of course.
The novel did, yeah. I've heard that as well, and I think that is true to some extent. We're saying with some of the samurai stuff, with the lightsaber battles, which I think is really, really cool. Yeah, but he did it in his way.
Totally. So I didn't get off the original thing. And the reason I brought that up is because for someone to sit and develop and bring out something is like beautiful and spiritually deep as the Force, so like you'd have to be a decent person. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't be an asshole and come up with the Force.
Right.
It just, that doesn't make sense. So like everything that I've believed in all these years and that I hold in such regard, a lot of this stuff came from George's brain, and so I would like to imagine that he is all the things that we want him to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've heard, just to piggyback off of the Dune thing and samurai thing, I don't know where I've heard it or read it, that he's mentioned that the various levels of the stories all come from like all kinds of things in our world that we've experienced. So like when I say layers, like what's going on with the rebels versus the Empire is, although it's all tied together, is separate than what like Luke is also going through. Like there's different layers. And I've heard he took inspiration from like history and other movies and books, but like human things that have occurred. It was just kind of dark, but the Empire is like very clearly like a Nazi looking enterprise.
Yeah.
I've heard him say that's on purpose. Stormtroopers and all that kind of stuff are like on purpose. And all these different layers come from different things. That's pretty creative, I would say. And it also, I think it probably drives us to really feel it. There's something really human about it. Like all the things that you're going to, you can imagine yourself, like what would be going on, like if I lived there or if I was experiencing this. There are things that seem familiar, even though it's such a, like it's a science fiction fantasy sort of ride. but they feel so familiar in some way. And that's just another beautiful thing. We could talk the beauty of it all day. I'm sorry to keep
No.
dragging.
Well, and I think that's a perfect example, like with Andor. There's no lightsabers. It's over here. It's still part of the universe, but it's over here, and we have a little bit more of the politics going on. We see a little bit more of how viral they were. Andor gets picked up for pretty much trespassing, and they put him in there for 6 years. And by the time he gets in there, he figures out, well, they're not even going to let me go. I'm going to die in here. I think it's so cool but it's still part of that Star Wars universe, and they just did such a good job to keep you entertained. Go back to some of the Easter egg to have Mon Mothma, involved in this. So we start to see how she's changing over and what she's going to do. And I'm super excited about the, season 2 for that, because that's going to bring us right up to Rogue One. They're doing 12 episodes, 3 or 4 episodes each is a year. So we're going to go from where we ended in Endor this first season, and it's going to be a year, the next year, the next year, and then boom, right into Rogue One, which I think is going to be phenomenal. And they're doing such a good job. And there's no lightsabers there. There's no Luke Skywalker. There's no Darth Vader. We see the Death Star at the end of, what they're making in prison. They talk about some things, but it's still, I think it's so cool how we can sort of step away. And almost like the Acolyte, yes, we have lightsabers and good and bad, but these are pretty much all new characters. That they have brought to life, and that Dave has brought to life. And with Ahsoka, I mean, she has become such a huge character. She has her own show, and she started out as this little cartoon, which grew and grew and grew. And she's one of my favorite characters at this point now. They're still coming out with characters that have substance in this universe. It's just expanded on it, and it's so good. And it's cool that we can sit around and talk about this stuff, because it is life. It is good and evil. It is funny stuff. It is sad stuff. I do think, like you said, Nick, at the beginning, you're just transformed into that. And while you're watching that, like you just said, Nick, you have that feeling at the same time. So I think it's just great what they've done. And the cinematography and the writing, I feel, is just phenomenal.
Coming and bringing what you said just right up to present day, especially with the samurai stuff too. I also thought, I don't know how you guys felt, but I thought that the opening first scene, the first fight scene of Acolyte with Carrie-Anne Moss, was one of the best fight scenes I've seen in so long. And it was so cool that it's like, because I saw, again, something else behind the scenes about, them wanting to bring Kung Fu and have it more like Kung Fu based. And I felt like I was watching a cross between Star Wars and The Matrix.
Yeah,
it checked every box for me. I was just like, this is one of the coolest. I watched it twice in a row. Like I paused it, or I finished the scene, and then I rewound it and watched it again, because I just thought it was such an epic way to start a new show, to start a new series, and like how cool that it was like the first scene. I just thought it was so cool.
Yeah, and the surprise for me, I was like, they just killed her. We're in the first. Now, yes, we're going back and we get to see more of her, and what's happened before, and we're starting to get more of the story. But as much as I hated it, I loved it, because I didn't expect that at all. And that's what I love about Star Wars, with Han dying, and I'm sure you guys did. My heart sunk when he ignited that lightsaber and killed Han. I was just like, holy shit, that's Han Solo. You can't kill Han Solo. It's so good, and it still keeps you on the edge of your seat no matter what. And I just think that the characters and the stuff that they're doing is just phenomenal. And we can sit around and talk about stuff like this and have a good time and go back and watch it and collect things. Have art that reminds us of that scene on Jabba's, barge, or whatever the case may be. The Abbey Road thing, it's such a cool combination of that historical picture and that historical music with these historical characters from a movie, and they're combined, and it's such a amazing piece of art. I think that's so cool that we're able to do that with the Star Wars universe.
I thought that that scene you're talking about, Nick, at the beginning of the whole show, I loved it, and I love that they keep doing it. Like when she's fighting Soul later on, where he doesn't even pull the weapon. It's this kung fu, like, I'm going to teach you something sort of vibe, like classic karate movie sort of thing. And I think what's cool is that they do a pretty good job of putting that into the movie and also having it serve like the characters and the story. Because I think that does serve the Jedi thing a lot, is that they don't have to like pull out a lightsaber all the time. Like they study this thing their whole life, like those classic karate kung fu movies. Their whole thing, is about peace, and the real ones don't even go for it. And I just love. I'm nervous though because they've already done it a couple of times. I'm nervous to see some of the good guys go down.
I know.
Speaking of that, anything stand out to you in the Acolyte other than the awesome opening scene?
Stand out. I mean, I'm just along for the ride right now. I'm still kind of just digesting it all. I actually, I like the episode where I got more backstory on the twins. I think the actress who's playing the older girls, Mia and what's her sister's Oshi.
Yeah.
Oshi,
yeah.
Yep.
She's killing it. Like it's hard enough to play one role well. She's playing two roles. I mean, it's just awesome. So I think she's doing a phenomenal job. I was sad to see Carrie Ann Moss go like that, because going into this, I was so excited because I love The Matrix, and she's one of my favorite characters in the world of sci-fi and all that stuff as Trinity. So I was excited to see like her come into this universe. I hope that we keep getting more of her as they're explaining and going back. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm just, anytime I get to, like I said, turn out the lights and go into the world of Star Wars, is a good night for me. It's Absolutely. A great thing. I think we're really lucky. I'm grateful that we have it. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
it is. I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna shoot you a couple of quick questions and put you on the spot here. Some of your favorite things from Star Wars. So,
okay.
All Rogue One, Solo, all the movies. What would be your favorite movie?
It might be The Empire Strikes Back. I would say that, I mean, if I could only ever watch one thing ever again, it would be A New Hope, only because the nostalgia, it's max nostalgia, because that was the first thing I saw. And I rewatch that every May 4th. It's just a rite of passage. It puts me back into that place. And I watch, everything else at various times through the year. But yeah, I mean, I think as a pound for pound motion picture, front to back, just ass kicking the whole way, it's hard to beat Empire for me.
Yeah, for sure. Favorite character?
Luke.
Nice. Okay.
I'm a Luke guy.
Very cool. Favorite live action that has come out? I know we're only a little bit into the Acolyte, but Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Andor, Mando.
I'm gonna go Obi-Wan. I loved it. It checked all the boxes for me. It was so well done. I've actually been meaning to rewatch it again because I just loved it. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's incredible. I feel the same way. It checked all the boxes, for me to bring me back into A New Hope and Empire, with all that stuff, so it was really good. And even going into the prequels, because I enjoyed them just as much. My favorite scene of all of Star Wars is the Dooku Yoda fight, because for me, Yoda was always this, feeble little thing, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there in the theater and he goes, and there goes his lightsaber, and he just starts rolling around and kicking Dooku's ass. And for me, that was just such an amazing thing to see my favorite character become the Jedi that he actually is. And then the Force lightning and all that stuff too was really cool. But for me, that scene is going to be mine, and so epic for me at that point, which is so cool.
We haven't talked a lot about Yoda, but Yoda to me, if I can just liken him to anything in our world, like I think of him as the Buddha. I think he's just he's the guy. We all aspire to be he's the whole thing. So I'm a huge fan as well.
Yeah, because he's not arrogant. He knows stuff. He likes to, he stays on the straight and narrow, but he'll walk the line a little bit on some things. I think he overall is like, okay, we want peace and harmony here. We can all get along. Let's try to do that. Oh, wait, no, okay, I'm going to have to do something over here. I'm going to have to take care of business, but then I'm going to come back over here and we're going to, try to make things work again. Yeah, I think they did such a good job in Empire. Frank Oz does such a great job, portraying that character. And you get into the prequels and you really see, and even though it was a puppet at first, but then the CGI that they did was just phenomenal. It looked like he's standing right there in front of you, which I think is incredible. And the technology that they have today is able to bring even more characters like him to life. But for me, yeah, that's my boy.
Love that.
Nick, do you have a favorite scene?
Yeah, again, it's going to go back to nostalgia. So when you explained your favorite scene, and your favorite scene, also mine is a fight scene. The first thing that I can think of, it's absolutely mega. It's when Luke is fighting Vader, and I believe it's in Return of the Jedi, and the music, and it's like it's like this choir of. It's like dark, evil, but with the choir, and they're fighting, and like they're hitting the hoses, and there's sparks coming down. I mean, it's right towards the end of the first trilogy, but where they're like really in battle, and some of the shots are almost like silhouetted. I just think cinematography is a 10. The score is a 10. It's the same thing of marrying the visual with the audio. I mean, it's just like that for me I'd never seen anything like that in my life. It was just movie making magic at its absolute best.
For sure. Nick, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on and talking to us about Star Wars, which we all love. It's just been great to talk to you and hear your story. And, thanks again for taking the time out to be with us.
Thank you for having me. I was looking forward to this ever since you sent the DM. This is so cool. It's what a gift that we've all been given, and that we can connect with people. I was just actually going to show you. So I have an R2D2 AirPod case.
Oh, nice.
And I take this with me, and this is like such a conversation starter because it's on the table. Like when I go for a meeting, and I'm put it on the table before I have lunch with somebody. It's always like, it's so interesting how far-reaching Star Wars is into people of all walks of life. It's just such a cool thing, and it's something that's connected all of us like the Force.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Boom.
Absolutely.
We're so grateful that we got to connect like this. We're across the country, like you just said, and we're all connecting over the thing that we're so involved with and is so special to us. So really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, man. Thank you both. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll have to do it again and check in with you. And once the Acolyte's done, and what is the next one is Skeleton Crew. Yeah. I think around Christmas time they're looking to drop that, and they're working on Andor, the new Mando and Grogu movie, which I think will be cool. So there's just so much more coming out that's going to be, so cool, and new books and comics and stuff like that. So it just keeps growing. So we'll definitely have to get you back on here.
Yeah, I would love to anytime.
All right, sounds good. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the latest episode of Star Wars Jedi Chat. Please join us again on the next one. Go back and check out some of the other ones. Hit the like button, hit the little bell so you get notified when we have new ones coming out. And again, Nick Perri, thank you so much for being here. And until then, we'll see you on the next Star Wars Jedi Chat. And may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. Peace.